We think we just do marketing, but actually there is a bigger effect of it. You know, that 30-second ad beaming into people's houses can make them understand a community they didn't understand before.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Identity Architects, the InfoSum podcast that spotlights the leaders in the media industry shaping the future of data-driven advertising. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti. We can talk about many important topics on this podcast, but occasionally we touch on something that goes beyond the normal topics in our media industry, and this episode is one of them. I had the chance to sit down and chat with the incredible and inspiring Chris Kenna, founder and CEO of Brand Advance Group. We talk about Chris's background, transitioning from the military to the media industry, the influence his two children have had on his work and purpose, and the importance of a diverse media landscape. Before we jump into that conversation, this is your reminder to hit that subscribe button so you'll always be the first to know when the latest episodes of Identity Architects drop. But without any further delay, here's my chat with Chris. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who I've admired for some time, who is doing just incredible and inspiring work, the founder and CEO of Brand Advance Group, Chris Kenna. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me and for such a nice intro.
Of course. For anyone who isn't aware of you, can you give us a quick introduction to yourself, but also to Brand Advance Group?
Yeah. So I'm Chris. I'm a gay black guy that has two kids, two teenage kids, well, a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. And I've sort of lived a couple of lives, I think. Sort of was in the military, well, in care as a kid, then in the military. And now I'm CEO of a media and technology company. All of them three people were different people, I think. But they all led to doing what I do now, which is Brand Advance Group, or in the US, BA Diversity Media Inc. And it is a company to help people reach, understand, and learn from different communities. So we're a company of TV channels and magazines, and then we have creative agency and data and insights platform called Cultural Intelligence. But all of these businesses, all part of the same group, all with the name of making people be understood and heard, whether they're LGBT, whether they're black, whether they're Hispanic, etc. So yeah. That is us.
Yeah, we've got so much to discuss. I'm really excited to pick your brains on so many amazing topics. But we'll start the way we always do, which is getting to know you a little bit better. Starting with, what is your earliest memory of advertising?
Of advertising? Ooh, I know. The shake and vac, doing the shake and vac dance.
Yeah.
Do you I don't really remember the ad. I just remember that I know every word for the song. And I remember as a kid that I did it. So I was in a children's home. I was in and out of care. Like, I did live at home for a little bit, but mostly in this children's home. I remember every week they had chores for all the people that lived in the children's home. And one of mine was to do the Hoover in 1 week. And I remember putting loads of shake and vac, like literally, it was like it just snowed in the living room or in this communal breakout room, because I just put loads on because I just kept doing the song and the dance. So yeah, I think that's my first. And bistro. Do you remember the really good bistro ads for the bistro gravy?
Yeah.
Like, she had a family, because I used to be really jealous of the advert, because there was like, the mom was cooking, wasn't she? And then all the family came in, and I'd be like, oh, I want a family like that. Don't know why, because it was a full white family, and obviously I would have stuck out in that. So, but I wanted the family aesthetic, maybe not quite to join theirs.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I mean, two classic commercials. So great choices. And before you kind of became obviously a founder and a CEO as you are today, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
So I wanted to be a soldier.
Yeah.
So since I could remember, I wanted to be a soldier. I used to tell everybody, I'm going to be a soldier and I'm going to defend Queen and country, because it was a queen at the time. But I also when I was a kid, I used to always try to build like shops, and do you know what I mean? Like, there was one game I used to play all the time, and it was basically with Smarties, and you used to get all the Smarties, and then you sit around with other people with their Smarties, and then the aim of the game was to not eat a single Smartie, but to swap all your Smarties and do negotiations with people so that you had a full pack of the same color.
Interesting.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I used to do that when I was like 7 or 8, and then just everyone around me, and then it'd be like negotiating. And then I got a Commodore 64. And apart from the games taking 2 hours to load and giving you epilepsy, I used to, I learned how to program basically. And I would build games that itemized all of the stuff in my room.
Wow.
So I built like this shop thingy that I could. I put a price to everything and it itemized everything. And then when people came into my shop, they could buy something and then it would tell me what I needed to restock on. But restocking actually meant me and my mate sneaking into the rooms that I'd sold everything to and stealing it back. Yeah. And then putting it back in the shop and then saying, well, if you want it back, you're going to have to buy it again. And let me see. Oh, there's a 10% discount. Do you know what I mean? Like I did
Wow.
that. And so I think obviously, as well as wanting to be a soldier, I want like business and
Yeah.
Brand Advance isn't the first business. I had one in Manchester as well. I've always had that. Do you know? I wasn't very academic though. Like I wasn't. I wouldn't have classified myself as stupid, but it was more like street smart. Like I could do the maths you need to get through life. I just couldn't bloody do algebra. But have you ever needed to know x equals 21? Like, no, never in your life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I've actually done the two things that I wanted to do, which is rare, I suppose.
Yeah, those entrepreneur instincts from such a young age is pretty incredible. So that's amazing. So obviously, you mentioned, you had a fascinating career, obviously in the military. What do you think it was that drew you to the advertising and marketing world?
A big fat accident.
Okay.
Because like you said, young entrepreneurial things. You don't know it's entrepreneurial things. It's the way your mind wants you to play things. I didn't know, and even watching the Bistro ad and do the shaken back and all of that, like. I didn't know that I knew it was an ad, but I didn't know what an ad was. And I didn't know that there was a creative agency that made that, and there was people that come up with that. You just don't know that bit of it. All you know is that first face thing that entertained you. So I didn't really, until I was in my 30s, I didn't know there was such thing as an advertising industry. Or maybe I'd just never given it any thought. It had never presented itself to me. It had never been an option to consider. I joined the army when I was 17, so I didn't go to uni or anything like that. And so, I just didn't know it existed. And then, like I said, I had a company in Manchester. It was a production company. And we make a few good, well, I would call them good, but people watching them might call them crap. But we made some shows for TV, like for BBC and stuff like that. And then we sold them shows, or the rights to them shows, and then moved to London with my partner. And that's when I first, got into advertising and realized it was a thing. So I went and worked at 3 times, basically. Or actually, the first one I worked at was at an out-of-home company. And that's when I started to, them big screens on the side of roads, they're actually a thing, and you sell them and you make content for them. So I worked there for a little while, for a couple of years. And then I went to Gay Times as commercial director because a now friend, James Frost, he had just bought it out of liquidation when it was part of a bigger group called Milliver Prowler Group. And then that's when I started realizing, you can sell audiences and people and interests. Obviously, special interest there was people that read Gay Times and being from the LGBT community. But and all of this, by this time, I'm like 31, 32. So quite late in life did I even know about it, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about telling kids about it now. Do you know what I mean? Like there's some just the skills of life that you learn when you're from a council estate just can help you sell. Like you're really good at creative. You've always been creative, things like that. So yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing career. Obviously, changed it to have gone through. What do you think? Was it the creativity? What do you think it was that drew you into the industry, and what kind of
it's the creativity, but also the selling. I really like the pitching.
Okay.
I love it, actually. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's and whatever them situations of pitching it is, and what, like, this is a form of pitch. I've sort of had to pitch my company and pitch me, and pitch the reason why, or whether it's you're in front of Unilever, in Amsterdam, and you're pitching to 200 people there,
Yeah.
or whether it's a little brand, or you're up in Manchester in Boohoo's office pitching when they first started. I just love that, coming up with getting a problem. I love problem solving.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I like. I like to fix something. So whether it is a creative problem, whether it is, when running a company, there's problems all the time. So whether it's a technical problem, I like to fix the problems. And so, yeah, I think that's what drew me in, because you can sort of blend problem solving and sales and creativity all in the one job.
Yeah.
And there ain't many jobs that you can actually do all three of them. Most jobs you could probably get two of them. It's the creativity bit that you probably is going to lack, because you sort of got to go in and do the same thing and tap away on your keys, and you could probably problem solve, and you probably is going to sell stuff. But having that creativity through it, it's important for me, because otherwise I just swivel up and wither away and die. Like, I would.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So what advice, obviously you must come across a lot of people early in their careers, just starting out in the media and advertising industry. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in their career in our industry?
Stick at it. Because we lose now, like, I don't know, something like 35 to 40% off, especially diverse talent, out of our industry within the first 2 years. Because it can seem cliquey, it can seem very straight, white, and run by males, and, all these things. So my first thing would be stick at it. Secondly is do what you want to do, and get out of it what you want to get out of. The thing with media advertising, and especially creatives, is they're all very passionate. But passionate can seem pushy, passionate can seem arrogant, passionate can seem, do you know what I mean? But it's passion. They just really want to do the best work. They love their job. So you've got to speak up and get in and get out of it what you want, because it will just be a load of personalities around you all the time. So I think that's really important, is go into it from day one saying, knowing, or trying to find out, you might not know it from day one, of what you want to get out of it. Just keep that in the back of your mind, because you're going to come across people that rub you up the wrong way. You're going to have great days, you're going to have hard days, you're going to have long days, And I would say as well, don't be afraid to move around in this industry. You don't need to stay somewhere for 15 years, because that's what that your mum, your dad, and your auntie and uncle did in their jobs. Like that, them days are gone. You can move every 2 years and it looks fine on your CV,
Yeah.
You could essentially move every year. It's fine. Creativity needs to be refreshed. It needs to, so I would definitely say move around. If something's not working, just move, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Be happy.
Yeah, be happy. I mean, that's great advice, to be fair. So we obviously work in an incredibly complex industry. And you mentioned, obviously, when we're all younger, not many of us can identify what an advert is or how that comes to be. How would you describe what you do within media and advertising to, say, a 10-year-old?
Oh, I would say we live by one motto: nothing about us without us. And that means whether we're making content, whether we're working with a client, whether we're making a TV show for one of our TV channels, or we're writing an article for one of our magazines, it will be made by the people that it's made for.
I love
nothing about us without us.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned a little bit earlier on, obviously, everyone's going to have those hard days. You're going to have those tough days. You're going to have those long days. What is it about, or what inspires you generally? What keeps you motivated to kind of get through those tough days?
Ooh, see, this is going to make me sound so bad. I can only assume that I am the giver of bad days rather than the receiver of bad days, because I never have a bad day. But I know staff, one staring at me right now, that Some people seem stressed sometimes. I don't know. I'm not wired like the rest of the world. I know that. I've got quite a lot of ADHD. You can probably tell because I'm in sat cell here. But also, in total honesty, I've had to work hard at making sure that I don't cause other people's bad days,
Mm.
because that has been my biggest learning thing. It's really, I have found it quite easy to start a company, if I'm totally honest. I found it quite easy to get people to buy into it. You know what I mean? What
Yeah.
I have found the most difficult is to go from being a boss that just tells everybody what they need to do to a leader that inspires people to be the best version of them, because they are two different things. And everyone calls
Yeah.
themselves a leader because they're in a position of leadership, but most of them are just bosses. Do you know what I mean? They're just telling they are. And I sort of went from one career where that is the best thing. You're always a
Mm.
boss, not a leader. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, generals are maybe leaders because they're not stood there getting shot at on a sand dune. But the rest of you over there, you over there. This is where we're going to do. This is the mission. This is how we're going to complete it. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do. You're going to do. Let's get it done. Do exactly as I've said, and everyone will stay alive. That's how you do it. Do you know? But
Yeah.
then you get into business, and then you've got to negotiate, and the way you say something can have a big effect on whether somebody even wants to bloody do it, and all of that. I've struggled with that. I've struggled a lot with it. So I think my thing isn't about me having a bad day. I think I would flip that and say I've have to work hard on ensuring that I'm not giving other people a bad day by going into a meeting, there's 50 people in a meeting and I'm saying 50 different tasks for 50 people. Actually, I need to just, here's our end goal, feed in, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm still not fully there yet. But yeah, I would say that's more my issue.
It's such a good message to leaders out there, right? Which is just so important. The last of our quick fire questions, and it's a personal favorite of mine because it always gives me a little bit of a unique insight into everybody I get to speak to. If there was a song that was a soundtrack to your life, what would it be?
Oh, a song that's a soundtrack to my life. Is there gosh, right, this one's hard because I know what the movie is to my life. That would be Slumdog Millionaire. You know how all the
Interesting.
different things
Yeah.
led to him winning the million, everything from the hardship of when he was a kid right through. Because I feel
Yeah.
like that's what's led me to brand advance every single, even down to having kids because I have a white one and a black one. So like even that, the watching them grow up and have
Yeah.
different lives, even though they were both in the same sphere. Um,
Mm.
but a song that's a soundtrack to my life. Oh, actually, I know. It is Tracy Chapman, Across the Lines. Right.
Mm.
Now, I know that that's a real hard song, and it's like, it's like about a hard part in her life. But the bits where she's singing about how she'll get through it, do you know what I mean? Because she's
Yeah.
singing about what she could see across there and like that she was going to help them get through it. And she wrote it in jail as well. And I don't know, there's something about that song that even now, if I'm feeling a little bit wavy, a little bit like, do you know what I mean? Whether it's personal, like I said, not so much how I work, but whether it's personal, things with work are not going well. Like 2023 for us was a hard year. Like
Yeah.
just everybody in the bloody UK decided to not spend anything on diversity or anything to do with it. Do you know what I mean? I know loads
Right.
of people have been hit with it, but like we got hit really hard, like really, really, really hard. So we luckily I was in the US and our New York office was doing okay, so that got us through it.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of them songs that, although it's not about my life necessarily, it reminds me of all the hardships that people can go through and still come out the other end. So yeah, it's Tracy Chapman, Across the
I
Lines.
love that. Yeah, I love that. Great song. We have a playlist on Spotify where we add all these songs to the
Okay.
playlist. So
Oh
we will
yeah,
add that.
that's a good addition to any playlist. Tracy Chapman.
100%.
People that are going, I don't know who that is. You need to listen to her album.
They're in for a treat. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I appreciate that. So we'll dig into some of the more topic related questions. And first and foremost, I'm super curious about Brand Advance Group, and we'll obviously dig into kind of the details around that. But
Yeah.
what inspired you to found Brand Advance Group in the first place?
My kids. So, like I said, so I've got Kyra, who is blonde haired, blue eyed, German, 23, and Jerome, who is mixed race, German, 19. One's white and one's mixed race, and I have watched the world be pretty shitty to Jerome and not
Mm.
so bad to Kyra. Even down to watching when we would come into the UK and the border people would take Jerome and Kyra apart and ask Kyra, is she okay? Does she feel safe with her little brother? Things like that. And just like society, and then just, Brand Advance, the original company, and then what we've become now was all about education, so educating people about different communities, but also doing that education through 30-second ads, through the media that and through data and insights with our cultural intelligence company and platform. So just to use creativity, to use data, to use insights to educate and just make the world a bit better, so that both my kids could enjoy it equally instead of one having a better life than the other. Oh no, I wouldn't even say they had a better life, but like he just got like it was like being in a goldfish bowl watching them two, because you sort of stood to the side and you can see it like happen in front of you, the way people would go to Kyra and speak and then dismiss Jerome right there, and the way like families would like they would just be different with her or make check that she's okay all the time. And she used to get really annoyed. She'd be like, it's my brother and that's my dad. And, like it was just weird. And like, it's just, I don't blame them people. It's just society and what they see. And they think, oh, thug, gangs, blah, blah, is you. And over here, she's not. And so why is she there kind of thing, and actually if somebody tried to kidnap her and take her into a country, I'd want someone to stop them. So there is a flip side to it, but you just watch this thing. And so that's why I started the company, was to fix the issues that were happening in creativity. There wasn't enough people from different communities, LGBT, Black, Hispanic, 50 plus, and disability. There was none of this was being shown enough in ads. None of this had its own channels for them communities, etc. And there wasn't enough magazines for these communities. But also in the back of my mind, it's always, I think, the fire in my belly to do that and to fix them real world issues was because of what I'd watched with my kids. And that fire still burns now. It annoys me. Racism annoys me. Homophobia annoys me, and a million other things that happen in the world. And I've tried to be part of the fix, but I've also been, I'm not naive. I was in the military. We didn't always do the right thing, looking for big bombs in a country that had none. We all know what I went to Iraq and I went to Afghan, and the reasons we were there, well, maybe it's not the real reasons, but I've tried to make sure that the things we do now, the things I do, the things that I work with, lots of friends and family work within Brand Advance Group, because we all have the same passions to make a difference, to just leave this place a little bit better than we found it, and try and not piss off as many people on the way as well. Like try and fix things without annoying everybody, because there's lots of people trying to fix things, but I think you can get so passionate in the righting the wrongs that you can become a problem yourself a little bit, and I mean that with no, it's at me as much as anybody else. So we're trying to find a different way to do it, rather than that sort of scream and shout at everybody because they're all bad. Because that doesn't get you anywhere fast. So that's why we started it, and all the different companies within the group, whether it's being the media part, launching our own magazines, launching our own TV channels, then the creative part, all of that with that focus. And like I said earlier, we have one motto: nothing about us without us. So hiring people from them communities to make content, to reach them communities, to help brands, to make advertisement that can sit in that content and feel like it should be there. To help fund, not just fund the content, but fund the content makers, to fund, to keep that sort of circle of marketing life going, which
Yeah.
is, if advertisers spend on content made by Black, LGBT, disability, people over 50, religions, Muslim, Jewish, etc., if people spend on that content, if they spend time investing into them people, then you can then have authenticity within them communities. You can sell more stuff to them communities, and then it'll give you more reason to invest more. And then voices are also keeping holding the world to account for things that matter to all of them communities, whether it's transgender rights, whether it's racism and stuff like that. So I think we just do marketing, but actually there is a bigger effect of it. That 30-second ad beaming into people's houses can make them understand a community they didn't understand before. Do you remember at Christmas a few years ago, the Sainsbury's ad? And then everybody went on to, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and then everyone went on to Twitter, like they do, keyboard warriors, and they're like, why is it a black family in the Sainsbury's ad? That doesn't represent the UK, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's because it's about 7.5 million people that are not white. But anyway, it doesn't represent my community, not my country, not my Sainsbury's. But now there's loads of ads with black families in there. And the keyboard warriors have gone to maybe a couple of hundred. Do you know what I mean? And they're never going to change. They've just got nothing better to do than tap their fingers. So let them be happy tapping. But it's not a big thing anymore. And that's just because now we understand. You see them outside. So they are part of society. Now you're seeing them in your living room. And now you're getting, it's making people become more aware and therefore more tolerant. And I think that's the great power that we sometimes forget we've got. So that's why I started the company.
Fascinating and just an incredible journey. I think you mentioned that the company has changed quite a lot since its kind of original founding. For anyone who's not familiar with the operations of Brand Advance Group, how would you describe it, and kind of how has that evolution happened over the last few years?
Yeah. So we started off probably 6 years ago as an SSP. So an SSP is the ad tech. I'm sorry if you're all marketeers watching this going, is he really explaining? But just in case somebody isn't, is the ad tech that serves ads into magazines, CTV, etc. And by ads, I mean digital or display ads when you're reading an article that pop up. So we did that. We built an SSP that served ads into hundreds of minority-owned publications globally, up to 2,000 actually. And whether that was CTV channels, whether that was LGBT magazines or black magazines or whatever that might be, all the different communities that you can get, it was our tech serving it into them. Then we've sort of evolved from that. Then we opened an insights company, and we now built a platform that uses AI, reads all these articles, reads lots of other data points, and this AI can tell you what's trending in the black community in London as opposed to what's trending in the black community in Manchester, and it can do that globally. And we have a team, and it's led the cultural intelligence. Started off as a consultancy, now it's a big tech platform. It's led by a friend of mine, Shane McCroy, and so they basically go in and give you the data and insights around any culture in any in any area, any situation. And then we launched our creative agency. Now, over time, and I always said when we first founded Brand Advance, the ad tech bit, I always said the aim of our company is to put ourselves out of business, because I don't want to have a piece of tech that serves ads into all the black media for you. Right. You should be just getting in touch with them yourselves. Like, you shouldn't even be running a campaign without running it, yes, in the Sun and blah, 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 but also running it in Gay Times and Attitude and
Yeah.
Diva, black publications, or whatever it might be. I didn't really want it to put us out of business 4 years in. I was hoping to get a good 10-year spread out of it. But anyway, last year, things started to change. Some for good reasons and some for not so good. Some brands were just starting to say, oh, diversity and Black lives are not mattering so much anymore. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way it happened. But other brands actually went, yeah, no, we've been spending our money through you, but actually we now know the names of all of the black publications, so we'll just do it directly.
Right.
So which is actually a good thing, just not good when you own the middle bit.
Yeah.
But so we sort of, like I said, last year hit us hard in that part of the company. So then we needed, the good thing about the team I have around me, is that we can pivot on a 1p. Like literally from one day to the next, we became a different company. We decided in December that we were going to launch TV channels. We now have two.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, they are good. When you look at them compared to other channels, we are up there with the best of them. Like, they're good channels, and we got content from all over the world for Black community, the Hispanic community, and we've done a partnership with for an LGBT channel as well. And so, sort of, what are we in now? April? So between December and April, my team has managed to say, okay, we're getting rid of the ad tech thing. We still have that, but it's just like, if we can't fill it with our media, then we'll go onto the network. But actually now we have 8 magazines and 2 owned TV channels, 1 channel that we do the content for, and 1 that's a partnership channel with another channel called Out TV. So that's like the core of the business now, is that we are we are TV channels. One of the channels is specifically for the Black community. One of the channels is specifically for the Hispanic community, so the whole channel's in Spanish. And one of the channels is for the LGBT community, called Pride TV. So it's Generation Black TV, Generation Hispanic TV, and Pride TV. And that's the main media part of the business. The creative agency and the data and insights platforms, they're still the same companies. But yeah, we're a media company for underserved communities, and by underserved, I mean, at the moment in the UK, Gen B TV is the only Black channel that there is. There's no Black channel in the UK. Like, we used to have channel AKA, if you can remember it used to be the Black music channel, and then we had a couple of other ones, but they always shut down. So yeah, but I think like now is the time to bring a Black channel, not just about music, but show Black cinema and Black art, and there's just so much great content and documentary. We've got some fantastic documentaries that have been made here in the UK. So yeah, that's what we are. We are a media company. We have our own technology. We have our own data and insights. We have our own creative agency. We make our own shows. We buy in shows. We write our own articles for our own publications. We also have a team of writers globally that write stuff. We are the people that we're making the content for, make the content. And that's who we are as a company now.
It's a fascinating evolution. And one of the things you've kind of alluded to a little bit earlier and during that answer is around this idea of ad spend. And obviously ad spend drives so much of what we do as an industry. Yeah. And when it comes to diversity, I kind of feel like there are 2 sides to the equation. Firstly, there are minority-owned brands that need to be given exposure across lots of media properties. And then there are mainstream brands that need to spend across minority-owned media companies. Yeah. From your perspective, in your opinion, obviously everything you do at Brand Advance Group, why are both sides of that equation important?
The point of a media agency, or the agencies that take 20, 30, 40% of a budget to help a brand, their whole point is to sell more stuff for that brand. Yeah, that's their point. Their whole point is to, whether it's a service, whether it's an actual product, is to get more of it in more people's hands. For a long time, everybody's been going for the same section of society, of the consumer spend. So everybody is all in that one pot. And then nearly half the world now is actually sits outside what everybody calls mainstream. So there's all this spend, 4.5 billion in the black spend in the UK. I think it's more than that. It's about 7 something billion a year in the UK for the LGBT pink pound. Then you've got the purple pound for people living with different abilities, and there's 12.3 million people in the UK with a sort of registered different ability. So all of this is all big money consumer spend that these agencies, media agencies, and the in-house marketing teams of these brands are wanting to get to. So it's the job of them to find more consumers. Now, nobody's saying you should shift all of your budget to diversity media if you truly think Black Lives Matter or if you're not homophobic. Nobody's ever said that. What we're saying is, and we're also saying, don't take money from that budget and use it to spend over here in the diversity. If you spent 100 quid to reach 900 people, and then all of a sudden another 100 people, and every day you spend 100 quid to reach 900 people, and then another 100 people come walking in the room, now you would up that by 20 quid. So you'd spend 120 quid so you can reach the 1,000 people in the room, not spend 800 quid to reach the 900 people and then do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. And the way people have been doing it up till recently has not made sense. What you should now say is, okay, so there are 4.5 million people that I can reach in the UK through Black and multi-ethnic media. Okay, so what do I need to add to my budget now to start reaching them over there? Because when you start taking it out of other pots, then you'll make an excuse to put it back in that pot. Because nobody wanted it to go from that pot. You still need to reach them as consumers. Actually, you've got a fight on your hand with the mainstream because every other brand, every competition you've got is going for that pot. So why not just add a bit more budget and reach it over there? And that's what we advocate for. That's what the industry should be doing. And then, so you still spend exactly what you're spending on mainstream media. You're adding a new consumer base. You're adding the media where you know they are. Now, that's not to say Black people don't read The Guardian, but it's to say that if you want to become culturally relevant to that Black person, you ain't going to be culturally relevant in The Guardian. So you can stick your ads in The Guardian still. Nobody says don't do that. But actually, if you're going to stick it in Black media, and you can be culturally relevant in that Black media, and then you might convert them into a consumer. So, don't know if it answered your question, but I certainly answered a question that I had in my head to answer.
No, that's super fascinating. Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting, and it is such a priority. And I like the way you look at it, meaning it shouldn't be about taking budgets from other areas to put into that area. It's assigning a specific budget to that.
Yeah.
Because as you say, otherwise you're creating that kind of conflict almost in that argument over that budget, which shouldn't exist.
No, that's exactly it. And which now, 2023, when we were in a bit of a technical recession and everybody was, things were kicking off all over the world. So people were pulling their spend. And so they were reprioritizing. And then all of a sudden it looks like Black Lives don't matter anymore because you will. Yeah. And that was because you took budgets from there to put it over there, and you took resource from there to put it over there. And now you've shipped it back. Actually, you want to reach more customers. Here is the offer of more customers. So now you need a budget for reaching them customers. That budget should have stayed. And then maybe 2023 wouldn't have been the bloodbath that it was. Because believe me, across publications, platforms, and companies like Brand Advance, but many, many, many others that were reaching these consumers. Everybody is writing about where did you go? You pledged billions. If even 10% of that had actually been spent, then every Black media owner would be a millionaire right now. Literally, they'd never want for money again. You'd have a new wave of new money, and there'd be a lot more cool cars on the road. But that didn't happen. That money didn't really get allocated. It was a pledge. It never really happened. And the small amounts that did is already starting to be pulled back because people are reprioritizing. And yes, I know you do that in economic times, but I think actually, aren't you meant to spend through an economic time of your brand? Isn't that the best time?
Yeah, It's interesting, and I also think it's something I've talked about a little bit with kind of LGBTQ plus people within the industry, that I felt that the 2023 Pride, which is often the barometer for where we're at with kind of media and so on and so forth, felt really muted compared to previous years. And
Yeah.
I speculate that it was because of the very recent backlash that happened with Bud Light and their campaign, and Target and their campaign, that then not only did it feel like there was a budgeting issue where obviously people were drawing budgets from different places, but it also felt like there was this nervousness suddenly, and therefore people didn't want to be open about or vocal about their support of the LGBTQ plus community. Is that something that you felt in 2023 as well?
Yeah, yeah. But also, I think, now that I live in New York, the UK and Europe, we just need to remember that things over there are not the same as the rest of the world. We take our cue too much from a place that is so polarized in its
Mm,
politics that, that whole thing wasn't really about transgender person. That was more about the left versus the right, these polarizing positions in a country where half of it hates the other half no matter what they do. And it just gave them another reason, another thing to jump on. It gave a lot of these sites like Bartbright and stuff like that something to really latch on and tell their millions of YouTube followers that listen to this real bad rhetoric,
yeah,
So I think, and so it's a shame that it had any effect in the UK,
yeah,
because nobody was taken to the streets here. Nobody, and they did silly things on that. Like, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was that guy that shot or with his semi-automatic weapon. He took all the Bud Light. Did you see it? And put it. That's how the whole thing kicked off. So he took it,
yeah,
put it in the garden, and he shot all the bottles and
yeah,
said, like, that's not my beer anymore. Like, what? There's a few things wrong with that before you even get to it have there being a transgender influencer involved. Why has he got a semi-automatic weapon, something for the military, in his garden? Why is it all right to make a video of you? If you did that in the UK, you'd be arrested
yeah,
straight away. You would be arrested. So why are we taking our cue off where brands are going to spend and where Pride is going to speak up from something that started from so fundamentally wrong in the first place? Sometimes there's so much good stuff with the US. I actually really like living there for many reasons, but sometimes we need to say, yeah, that thing we're not going to take and import it into our country. And that
yeah,
was one of them moments. We missed a moment where we could have led.
yeah,
We could have led as a country. We could have led as individuals. We could have led as prides. Pride was fought for us in New York, down in Christopher Street. So it's a shame that the country that gave it sort of went so against it as well, But we had a moment where we could have took a leadership. Hopefully, we sort ourselves out. Our prides need to have a. Well, I'm going to be totally honest. This is the voice of me. Um, our prides need to stand up a bit more. Need to remember what they are. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
I love a lot of the people that run them, even the CEOs, which I don't imagine is Brad. But just remember, it's not a music festival for you to bring Ariana Grande and have the time of your life. There is a reason why it's there. And yes, you can move Pride to places where you can sell more tickets and have a bigger stage. But across the road on Canal Street, that is where people have been fighting for our rights for many, many years. And it's the same in London, and it's the same in Birmingham and Glasgow and Edinburgh and all over the country. So I think the prides just need to remember it's not about commercial. Yes, you need it to run, and there's a lot of cost in it. I get all that. I am not against you going out and getting brands. Like, I'll help you. I would happily help any of them. I really would. But I'd give my time for free to help them pull in some money. But what I do need them to do is to get their voice back. Or to hand over to somebody that will take that voice. Do you know what I mean? Whether it's the voice of making sure prides are inclusive so that you don't do what London does and has Pride and then has Black Pride. Like, don't get me wrong, love Lady Phil and everything she's done. It's just a shame we seem to have this. And even if it's just the optics to me, it's sort of like, all right, so am I meant to go to that one? Because, I mean, Black Pride is cooler. But, like, am I allowed to go to that one? Because you're calling that one Pride and that one's Black
Yeah.
Pride. And do you know what I mean? It's just something. It's like, what? I don't fully get it. Although I like that there's 2 weekends. And then, yeah, things like Manchester Pride with a split, and just like, we just need to get back to what are we doing here? We're trying to, it's not a party yet. All
Yeah.
rights are not won yet. So brands can do their bit, corporates can do their bit. We, as members of the community with some influence, can do our bit on things like podcasts and interviews and stuff like that, and with our teams. But Pride, do your bit.
I completely agree, and it's super important. I really hope that 2024 shapes up to be a better year from that perspective. I've been to a few events recently, and it seems to be the case from what I hear from what agencies and brands and others are planning. But it's kind of it's a wait and see moment, I guess.
Yeah. I would honestly say, and I don't know who from what prides will be listening to this, but I'd honestly say, don't do it at your own peril.
Yeah,
Honestly, like, I've got the privilege of owning an LGBT magazine and being partnered on an LGBT channel that's broadcasting in many countries. We will talk about it if it's not done. That's fact. We'll talk about it. We'll make documentaries about it. We will do what needs to be done to get that voice out there. And if we have to, we'll come up with an alternative. Like that. And I'm talking from, and I mean this honestly. So I know lots of other passionate people, people like Monroe Bergdorf, and, like, there's so many people out there that will just not sit down and, and let it be another year where voices are not heard, where people are not standing up for the rights. And like we said, it's not a party yet. There's still people that are, have rules and laws against them rather than for them. There's still arguments being had, of what you're allowed to be in school and blah blah blah. There's still a long way to go. Even in our great nation, there's still a long way to go. And in other countries, my God, it could be a lot worse. So we need to. Then I would say, I know you said you hope that they get better. I would say, dare you not to.
yeah, and it's obviously it's still such an important topic, but there's still so much work to do, and as you say, there's still so much hate in the world and still so much inequality in the world. I think it's interesting because I always believe that companies and leaders within those companies can have an incredible influence on a lot of things. And I, as a visible LGBTQ plus leader, get a lot of people asking me, what would they recommend I do within an organization for DE&I initiatives. So I'm going to kind of spin it around and ask you that question, which is, what would your recommendation be to companies and leaders that are listening to this, that genuinely want to improve the diversity of their company and improve the working environment for diverse employees?
So there's a couple of things. One is, work with employees and really listen to employees that are from them communities and say, what am I doing well? What is the company doing well? What do you want me to do better? Give me two things to work on. You're not going to be able to fix them straight away, especially if they're an I rather than a company thing. Company policies can be rewritten in 24 hours. But, we've all been brought up and conditioned in certain ways. So if we need to change that, then it takes time to change that. And we've got to appreciate that. But we've got to work on it as well. And it's a consistent work. I think, and that's, saying that to companies, but also there's a duty for companies to not expect people from them communities that work for them to fix the problem for them. It is not the job of your LGBT employees to have your ERG, to set it up, to set up groups, to come to you with the fixes. You can pay them to do that, but and then I'm sure they will all jump at it. And sometimes they'll do it for free. They will. But don't expect it. Don't allocate them. There has to be a nice way of them saying, I've got enough to deal with. I really don't want to take this on as well because it's a lot, you
Yeah.
know. And then I think for all of us, so that's the leaders can ask and really listen. I think the companies can make sure they're not just forcing people to do it. And then for all of us, whether it's LGBT rights or whatever rights it might be, we can um, and whether you're part of the community or you're not, whether you're an ally or you're not, you're just indifferent, it doesn't matter. But what you can do is help to look after the mental health of the people that are pushing in the company, that are having to speak about trauma 1 month every year so that you can understand the community better. We can all, as a human race, look after people. Just ask, are you okay? Really good. Really liked you telling that. But just, are you okay? Because you just had to, the one thing that I've found, I've got used to it now, and I've got better at dealing with it and asking for help when I can't. But it's really great that we're in leadership positions, and this is the leadership thing that we're doing here. Where we get to chat and talk about what we do as companies and our lives and stuff. But we've also got to remember, like it is trauma, whether it's LGBT, whether it's being in care, whether it's being in the military. Do you know what I mean? There's trauma mixed in that. And yes, okay, it makes a good podcast and it makes a good article for you to give a little bit, but you're giving a little bit, like you're taking a little bit of soul and saying, yeah, there you go. Let me tell you every bad thing that's ever happened so that you can relate in some ways or not relate but be more interested, so then you'll listen to the things I need to tell you because I need you to fix them. Do you know what I mean? So I think we just got to be cautious of that as well, and in staff and in the leaders. It's hard, it's not easy for leaders, and don't take anything away, we get paid enough money to go and sort ourselves out. I'm not going to take that away like that. Well, hopefully we do. But I would say if we're going to look after everybody else, then the leader as well, just somebody, somebody, family or somebody that's in the senior team, just check in on the CEO or the MD or whatever. Just like, we're going through a change. It's going to feel like you've been doing everything wrong for your whole life. I'll support you. You support them so that they can support the team. But if you don't mind, let's me and you once a week have a quick chat, even if it's just a 20-minute chat. Just tell me, let you get it off your chest. How are you? Because you're going to need to be of sound body and mind to be able to steer this ship through it, to be able to take us to a better place. So we've got to make sure that you are of sound body and mind. So I think for the leader as well, because it can feel like the weight of the world. Like you've got to answer, and you've still got to do your day job. You still got to make decisions. You still got to get through. And then there's all these things, and there's so much conflicting advice, and there's so many things to think about. We're talking about one, LGBT, but if you're going to do one, you sort of got to do them all. So you got to make sure you're Black and you're Muslim and you're Jewish employees all feel protected, and every community that could possibly walk through your door, and then that's you internally. And then externally, do we make sure that we're a good company for people to know they can come and work with us? And there's a lot. And that's not on top of bloody P&Ls and more meetings than any one person should ever do in one day, So, I think that support is really important across the board, and somebody to just give a bit of support to the top person as well, because then they'll do a better job at fixing.
It's such an important an area to focus on. I think it's such an important thing that doesn't get talked about enough is as you mentioned, the pressure when you are an LGBTQ plus leader or any kind of diverse leader, that you do put yourself out there, and it can feel like a lot of pressure to be the person that's going to constantly shine a spotlight on these issues. So as you say, having that person that checks in on those individuals is just so incredibly important, and something I don't think gets talked about enough. We're obviously about to wrap things up. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think we should touch on before we close things off?
Do you know, I've been talking about military and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave you with like a little acronym. And I feel like this acronym, if you use this when you're thinking about, pushing diversity into a company, or if you come up with a plan to embrace a new community, to embrace new media, to run more LGBT campaigns or Black campaigns, etc. I think I've got a little acronym that I use, but then I try and get the wider team and our partners to use as well. And it's DMTR. The first D is do it. So if you're thinking about it, if you're thinking about starting an ERG, if you're thinking about doing a Pride campaign for the first time, just do it. Don't feel like, oh, have I got this in order or that in order? Just go for it. Be open. Work with anybody you can get access to, but that's the D's. Do it. The M is the mean it. Authenticity cannot be hired and cannot be bought and cannot be trained. You will only be authentically speaking to that community if you just continue to do it. Some people are going to whinge the first time you do it and say, where have you been? Let them whinge. Just carry on. Keep speaking. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Then the T is train it. Now that you know what you're doing, make sure everyone in the team and then everyone in the wider company knows what you're doing and knows how to carry it on. Because the worst thing that happens, and we find this a lot, is a brand or a company is doing really well. And then the person that led it leaves and moves to another company. And all of a sudden that brand no longer supports any Pride. Like it's done, gone. So do it, mean it, train it, and then repeat everything I've just said, which is the R. So I think DMTR. A little acronym to leave everyone with.
Yeah, I love that. Look, this podcast is all about individuals like yourself who are pioneers in our industry, who are changing the way that we look at our industry and we look at our media. So when you look at people you admire within the industry and within your network, who would you nominate for me to speak to in an upcoming episode?
Ooh, I have to say him because he'll kill me if I don't. But Jerry Dakin he's part of the LGBT community, but he is the person. He gave me my chance. He brought me into Unilever and said, Unilever, you need to listen to the services that this guy's wanting to sell because there's no one else doing it, and just listen to him. And it worked. I have a company now. But also, I think he's one of them guys. He's been like, was recently the head of global media for Beam Suntory. He was at Mondelez before that. He was at Diageo. Someone in the background told me Diageo. Yeah. So yeah, he's who I would speak to next, because I think you'll get the other side. So I've told you the sort of the service provider side. He's the brand side, and I think a lot of readers get a lot of readers. No, it's a podcast, Chris. A lot of listeners would get a lot from what he's got to say because he sits in these big global brands and sets policy. So that's my nomination.
I love that. We will definitely reach out to him and see if we can get him on the pod. Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And just more importantly, thank you for being so inspiring in everything you've said. Thank you for your incredible work that you do at Brand Advance Group. It's so incredibly important. The visibility is so incredibly important. So I just appreciate you so much. And thank you for being on the podcast.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thanks again to Chris for joining me on the podcast and for all you're doing for minority groups within the media landscape. I hope everyone took something from this podcast, and maybe it's as simple as DMTR. Do it, mean it, train it, repeat it. All that leaves for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button so you'll know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.